The room was dim, filled with shadows that stretched like claws across the faded wallpaper. A little girl, no older than 7, pressed herself against the corner of the wall, her small hands trembling as she shielded her younger brother. Her sobs echoed in the silence, raw and heartbreaking. "Please, don't hurt us," she begged, her voice quivering, eyes wide with fear. The man towering over them, red-eyed and unshaven, gripped the empty whiskey bottle tighter. His voice thundered, harsh and merciless, "Shut up, or you'll regret it." The boy whimpered, burying his face into his sister's shoulder. She hugged him tighter, whispering shaky words of comfort, words she barely believed herself. The little girl's name was Emily. For weeks, she had endured this storm of cruelty in silence, protecting her brother from blows, insults, and the crushing weight of neglect. But tonight was different. Tonight, something in the air felt heavier, like the world itself was holding its breath. Suddenly, the front door burst open. A powerful voice shook the silence. "Nuarayaskaingo en har." Emily's head snapped up. Her teary eyes widened at the sight in the doorway. A tall man in an immaculate suit stood there, his presence commanding, his eyes blazing with fury. His voice carried both authority and shock, echoing through the broken-down house. It was her father, her real father, the man she hadn't seen in almost 3 years, the man she thought had forgotten them, the man who, unbeknownst to her, was a millionaire. The man in the suit, Richard Hamilton, strode into the room, his polished shoes clicking against the cracked wooden floor. He froze when his gaze fell on his children. Emily's cheeks were streaked with tears, her dress torn, her tiny arms wrapped tightly around her little brother, Daniel, who was barely 4. "Emily, Daniel." Richard's voice broke, trembling with something rare for him. Fear. The drunken man staggered back, trying to mask his panic with aggression. "Who the hell are you?" He spat. Richard's eyes blazed. "I'm their father." The bottle slipped from the man's hand, shattering against the floor. Emily blinked, her small lips parting in disbelief. She had no memory of him beyond fragments. A gentle laugh, the scent of expensive cologne, the warmth of strong arms that once lifted her high in the air. But years of silence had convinced her he was gone forever. "Daddy?" Her voice cracked like fragile glass. Richard's chest tightened. He knelt down instantly, extending his arms. "Yes, sweetheart, it's me. I'm here now." Emily hesitated, then scrambled forward, clutching him desperately. Daniel followed, burying his face into his father's chest. Richard wrapped them both tightly, his jaw clenched to keep his emotions from spilling over. The drunken man sneered. "So you're the big shot who left them. Rich man too busy for his kids, huh? Guess they were good enough for me to raise while you played millionaire." Richard stood, keeping his children behind him. His voice was low, deadly calm. "You call this raising? Look at them. Look what you've done." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then, unexpectedly, Emily spoke. Her little voice shook, but it carried the weight of her pain. "He yells at us every night. He takes Mommy's picture and throws it on the floor. He says we don't matter, but I try to be brave for Daniel." Her words pierced Richard deeper than any blade could. The drunken man scoffed, but there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. "They're just brats. Always whining. You don't know what it's like here." Richard's voice thundered, "Oi-oh-gitch!" The word echoed so fiercely that even Emily flinched, though she clung tighter to her father's leg. "You've lost your last excuse. You will never touch them again." Within an hour, the authorities were called. The man was dragged out, shouting curses until his voice disappeared into the night. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering, but no one dared intervene. Emily sat on the couch, staring at her father with wide, searching eyes. Daniel leaned against her shoulder, half asleep, but unwilling to let go. Richard paced the room, his heart heavy with guilt. He had left years ago after a bitter divorce, convinced his children were safe with their mother. He buried himself in business, chasing success across cities, building an empire worth millions. But success had blinded him. He had trusted the wrong people. And now, standing in the decaying home, looking at his fragile children, he realized how far he had fallen as a father. Emily finally spoke. "Why did you leave us?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was quiet, but in that quietness was a storm of wounds she didn't know how to name. Richard knelt in front of her, his hands trembling as he reached for hers. "Sweetheart, I thought you were safe. I thought I was doing the right thing. But I was wrong. So terribly wrong." A tear slipped down Emily's cheeks, but she didn't pull away. She looked at him, her small brow furrowed, as if deciding whether to believe him. And then, something unexpected happened. Daniel stirred awake, lifted his tiny hand, and touched Richard's face. "Daddy, don't leave again." Those 4 words shattered every wall Richard had built around his heart. "I won't," he vowed. His voice shook, but the determination in it was unbreakable. "I swear to you both. I will never leave you again." The days that followed were not easy. Richard moved them out of the old house and into his sprawling mansion on the edge of the city. For Emily and Daniel, it was like stepping into another world. Golden chandeliers, endless rooms, gardens that stretched like fairy tales. But Emily didn't care about chandeliers or gardens. She only wanted one thing: safety. At first she woke in the middle of the night, clutching Daniel, afraid the yelling would start again. She would tiptoe into her father's room, peeking inside, afraid he'd vanish. And every time, Richard would rise from bed, take her by the hand, and let her sleep beside him, whispering, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Bit by bit, the walls Emily had built around her heart began to crack. One afternoon, as Richard returned from a meeting, he found Emily sitting on the staircase with a sketchbook in her lap. She quickly tried to hide it, embarrassed. "What are you drawing?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then showed him. On the page was a child's drawing a house, 2 stick figures holding hands, a smaller one between them. Above it, written in shaky letters, "Family." Richard's throat tightened. He sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "That's beautiful, Emily." As she looked up at him, eyes shining. "Do we get to keep this family? For real this time?" He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Yes, for real." But the road wasn't without obstacles. One evening, while hosting a charity dinner, Richard overheard some of his wealthy peers whispering cruelly. "Did you hear? Hamilton's kids were living with some drunk in a rundown neighborhood. Poor little things. Imagine the shame." Richard's jaw clenched, but before he could respond, Emily, standing nearby in her simple dress, lifted her chin. "We're not ashamed," she said firmly. "We're just happy Daddy came back for us." The room fell silent. Even the richest guests were left speechless at the courage in her small voice. Richard's eyes glistened with pride. His daughter was stronger than he could have ever imagined. The true turning point came weeks later. Emily had been invited to a private school, one of the finest in the city. But she hesitated, clinging to Daniel. "I don't want to leave him," she whispered. Richard knelt before her. "Sweetheart, he'll be with me. You'll both always have me now. And you deserve this chance. You deserve to shine." Emily looked at her father, then at Daniel, who nodded sleepily. For the first time, she let go without fear. Walking into the grand school, her small backpack bouncing against her shoulders, Emily didn't look like the frightened girl from that dark house anymore. She walked with quiet strength, carrying the memory of that night. The night she had begged, "Don't hurt us," only to find hope waiting at the door. And deep down, she knew her story was no longer about fear. It was about the love that had finally found its way home.